Hi everybody, my name is Niamh Kelly from the HR department Shropshire, and I'd like to welcome you to this short snippet around recruitment services. I'd like to welcome Julia Hughes, who's Managing Director of Working Solutions based in Ludlow. Hi Julia. Hello Niamh. So Julia, tell me all about the business. How did you end up in recruitment?
Well, after graduating, I worked in various organisations, both large and small, and I developed a tremendous wish to have my own business. My father was an accountant, and I thought, well, why not? If all these people can run a business, why can't I? So my slogan for the company, certainly at the moment, is "You're only as good as the people you hire." And I've always felt very passionately how important the people in an organisation are, rather than, you know, the person who's necessarily running the business, although of course they're also very important. So I did my HR training at the University of Wolverhampton, and yeah, I've been running Working Solutions in Ludlow since 1995, actually. So,
crikey, so 26 years now, so yeah. Well over 25 years experience. So you are an experienced recruiter, and what kind of recruitment methods do you find companies using now? Has it been all changed because of the pandemic?
I mean, life has changed so dramatically, hasn't it, in so many ways. There are certain sort of key methods that, of course, employers are still using to find people. So they're still very much using job boards. They're using, maybe they're using career pages on their own websites. They're using LinkedIn for some of the roles that they're advertising. And one big change actually is that they're increasingly using Facebook, which is a big change.
So job boards, are they like Indeed and Monster and all the rest of them?
Yeah, CV Library and yeah, and all those. Yeah, and we use those extensively ourselves, as well as lots of other methods for, you know, finding people for the client. So we use our local radio station, for example, yeah, but so there has been a change. And of course, the other very big change is that companies are now screening individuals with virtual meetings, something like this. They're still using testing software, but I think the face-to-face interview is very much now a second interview, and they're screening people initially by meeting them over the internet first, which is great in a way, of course. It saves everybody a lot of time. But I do think there's the sort of, you know, there's a difference in the way that people need to prepare for those meetings. So, but yeah.
So what hasn't changed? I mean, I suspect that there are things that you're still always going to recommend a candidate do. What hasn't changed?
Well, do you know what hasn't changed is that people are still asked to submit CVs. And I do think that, I mean, it's a bit of a sort of a bugbear with me. I do think people don't pay enough attention to their CVs. When I see spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes, I think, well, why didn't they get a second pair of eyes to look over their CV? And in particular, you know, what people need to remember is that a CV is a sales tool. So they must consider the person who's reading their CV and not just send out a blanket CV to all the different jobs they apply for. They need to really think about who's reading it and what are they looking for? How do their skills match what the employer's looking for? And if they don't perfectly match, then how can they give examples of interests that they've got, studies that they're doing, you know, reasons why they should be considered? There is, unfortunately, a certain movement towards using AI to read CVs. So, you know, people don't always read them from cover to cover. I always say to candidates as well, just remember, people scan CVs. They will often take 7 seconds, read it in a Z shape. And, you know, they start with the name, they go straight down to the current employment. They might, you know, go across to education, but they're just getting a snapshot very quickly. So they must really think about certain things. And to me, the personal statement is the sort of key to having a strong CV, because even if you don't perfectly match the job requirements, you can use that personal statement to give evidence of the skills, the experience that you've got, the studies that you're doing. And again, very succinct, short sentences. People don't want to read long sentences anymore. So very, very short, to the point. And then the other thing that I don't see often enough is achievements. It's really helpful. I mean, particularly with a sales CV, but also with other CVs as well. Every job that you've done, you will have some sort of an achievement that you can bullet point and highlight to an employer. So, you know, even if it's just reorganizing the filing, or, you know, something that you've contributed to the efficiency of the company, not just something that you've learned for yourself, something that you've done for them. So, you know, you've actually improved something by, and again, make it very specific, you know, the acronym SMART, make it specific, make it measurable. You know, you saved the company so much money in so much time by, you know, increasing something by a certain percentage. Those kinds of things are what people love to read in CVs, because they can absorb that information very quickly without having to think about what do the words really mean. You know, they don't want to read between the lines. They want it very clear, and quite salesy. As I say, it is a sales tool.
Where do you stand, Julia? What would be your preference in a CV? So I'm sensing what you're saying is name and contact details, personal statement. Would you put work experience next or education next?
Well, of course, that's a good question, Niamh. So, I mean, I was talking to somebody yesterday who's applying for an accounts role. Now, he's not working in accounts at the moment. He'd put his account studies at the bottom of his CV. He's actually got to AAT 3, but it's not at all obvious until you actually take the time to read all the way through and look at his education. You think, my goodness, he's got AAT 3. He must know an awful lot about accounts. But he doesn't tell you that at the beginning, and he doesn't tell you anything about how he's doing some accounts in his current job, doesn't mention it in his personal statement. So in that instance, what I said to him was, well, put your education, your AAT exams that you've passed under your personal statement. But the rest of your education, which might be maybe just GCSEs or something, that's absolutely fine, or NVQs, whatever, put that at the end and say, you know, education continued. So again, you play to your strengths. That's the thing. And I'm amazed by how many CVs I see that don't. And in the old days, many years ago, I used to rewrite people's personal statements and say, oh, you know, this is how you do it. And then after a while, I thought, hang on a minute, I'm not exactly overselling them, but people need to think about these things for themselves, because that is how they're going to stand out. And of course, at interview, they need to be able to embody those very things. And I did see a case recently where somebody hired somebody because they'd videoed them, they'd had a video meeting, they saw the CV, read the references, all marvelous, got the person into the job, and actually the person wasn't nearly as competent as they'd said they were. So I'm not saying, when I say it's a sales tool, I am saying that very judiciously. You mustn't, of course, oversell yourself. It must be accurate and honest, but at the same time, tell the employer what they want to read.
That's really helpful, Julia. So what you're saying is tailor it to the situation. It's really important. What would be your recommendations or advice for people who may not have a huge amount of work experience, so can't point to a lot of jobs, or indeed plenty of people out there like myself will have had gaps in their careers, so they might have been working at home, and I think everybody heard the telephone there, so everybody knows we're all working from home at the moment. But you know, working from home, raising a family, might have had other caring responsibilities. How would you suggest that people address that in their CV?
Well, I don't think they need to feel at all reticent about putting that information in. It's really important not to have any gaps, because after all, you know, if you see a big gap, you could potentially as an employer think, well, has that person been in prison, or, you know, why is there a big gap? So it's really important to account for all the years. But again, what I always say to people is maximize the work that is relevant to the job you're applying for and minimize the work that isn't. So of course we all know, I mean, I've had 4 children. We all know that bringing up children is a job in itself. But you don't need to go into any details. I've seen some people try to, you know, make it all flowery and say that they were, you know, doing all this domestic stuff. You don't need to go into any detail about anything that's not relevant to the job.
Okay. So finally, if there was one thing that you would say to prospective candidates to do to prepare, what would that one thing be, Julia? What's the key thing for you in your role?
I would say researching the company. If you possibly can, have a look on LinkedIn, see if you happen to know somebody who works at the company you really want to apply for a job at. I mean, some recruiters and some people say, you know, actually write to the company in advance, or, you know, follow it. I think following up an interview with a thank you letter is very, very good practice. And not enough people do that. That makes you stand out as being a little bit unusual. You don't need to kind of stalk them, obviously, but you do need to have a really good sense of what the company culture is, what the dress code is. Are they very much 9 to 5, or are they the sort of company where actually they expect people to do a bit extra, and they you know, they value that, they might reward that. So again, that would affect how you describe your working style, you know. So it's so important to do your research, know who you're talking to, and not just send out one CV to all the different companies, because it just won't cut the mustard. There's obviously a lot of people out there looking to not necessarily, you know, go up the ladder particularly. They might be looking to pivot their careers completely and do something different, you know, which is great. And they might have a whole different angle to bring. So, you know, people shouldn't be afraid of applying for jobs that they haven't done before, particularly. They just need to think about their transferable skills and what have they got to offer to that employer.
That's fantastic.
I hope that's helpful.
That's really helpful. How do people go about finding out what kind of roles your company has available for your clients?
Yes, well, we do cover a huge range of different jobs. So they're all on our website. We don't specialize in any particular sector because the companies we work with are very varied. They might be big, they might be small, they might be engineering, they might be anything, all different kinds. So they're all on our website under the different categories, and people can also register on our website if they would like to, or they can just send us their CV. But yeah, visit the website, workingsolutions.co.uk.
Thank you so much, Julia. I hope that people will find that useful. I'm sure they will. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Niamh. Thank you for your time.